would you get Caps over Jensen if that becomes an option?
I mean, obviously that's like such a hypothetical, but in a world where that's possible, yes, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Okay.
I mean, here's the problem with that. Like, I just mean that in terms of what you think of Caps and Jensen. Like, I personally think Jensen's an underrated player.
You think he's Caps level?
Nah, the problem with that is Caps, I think, is the most overrated player probably to ever play League of Legends, because people act as though he is like prime Faker Season 3 all the time, and then he just has like occasional bad games. Right? I've never seen anyone as good as him have as many bad games at the same fucking time, like 1 second later than the amazing game he just had. Like as a result, I think people don't even try and average the two. They just think to themselves, the others don't matter. Right? The bad games matter for every player. I don't care who the fuck you are. You can be shy, you can be rookie. Bad games matter. So my problem there is like, people want the upside of Caps, and they're ignoring that at the moment in G2, you don't see the downside because of the fucking teammates he has. Tell you what, one thing I appreciate the fuck out of with Jensen is when you put this guy on any type of team, he always does his job. So if his job is he has to hard carry lane and win lane against Bjergsen every time, he might fucking do it. He can do it. The guy's a stud. That's one of the reasons I lashed out at the C9 fans. The way that they actually have responded. Like, listen, it's one thing if you just banter Jensen, like, haha, you're not going to win without us. You know, you could have won. That's one thing. They were legit telling him, like, he's a piece of shit and, like, you know, fuck this guy. It's like, mate, this guy put your franchise on his motherfucking back.
He was their best player for 3 years. Yeah, Jensen did so much for C9. But, yeah, I do agree Jensen's rep is not equivalent to who he is as a player, and he gets memed on and he gets dissed on by not just Cloud9 fans.
Here's the best way to say it. Here's the difference between how I think of Jensen and how fans do. Fans go, think of all the game 5s he lost. Just press R, Jensen. Here's the way I think of him. You're right, he fucked it up in a game you would have never been playing in if he hadn't have carried you to that game. You see the difference there? Like, they go to the last point, I take the whole thing if I can.
It's just that
so
moment.
To me, until, like, before, put it this way, before he won the title this year, I think he was the best player to ever play in NA that hadn't won the title. I don't think that's even very debatable. He was a fucking amazing player.
Your take, Artemis?
Yeah, Jensen's one of those guys who always does his...
Oh, it just cut out again, mate.
How am I doing now? Am I still fine?
Yeah.
Right, double check something for a second. Go into the settings on Discord and just turn off the thing where it like auto activates. Just have it turned on the whole time.
It's off.
It's off. Sure.
Okay, so yeah, like you said, Jensen is one of the most disciplined players we've seen in NLCS. He understands his job and he'll do it to a T almost every time. Like, he can carry, but he won't demand that, which I think is great. And I guess comparing him to Caps, I do think that Caps is susceptible to these really, really bad games where he basically is just running it down the mid lane. And I think it's just a lack of discipline. Like, there's no reason that a player at Caps' level should be playing so badly in a game, right? There's literally no reason. He is not at that level. It's unbecoming of a player of his pedigree, and he frankly shouldn't do it. And I see it as a lack of discipline. And this is extrapolating quite a bit, but looking at the way G2 conducts themselves with their draft, kind of their carefree, hang loose attitude where we're going to beat you, but we're going to style on you and do it creatively. Like, it doesn't strike me as the most regimented and disciplined environment. So I'd be very curious to see how Caps would conduct themselves and how he would perform in a different structure with like different expectations, different coaching, different teammates, different levels of discipline. Like, what if he was able to play the game disciplinedly for an 18-game split and not have a bad game? Then we would say, okay, this guy's the best Western mid laner by far. There would be
you faker then.
There would be no debate, right? There would be absolutely no debate.
Wait, the first thing I would say is, what about on Fnatic? Fnatic, extremely structured team. Youngbuck, I would imagine, extremely structured, like strict coach. Like, Caps was still up and down. Like, we've seen Caps on...
Here's the problem, Loco, is like the more I've gotten to know about those Fnatic teams that Caps played on, it's actually the opposite of structure, though, because structure would be like what he's saying here is basically, not in all scenarios, obviously, he's got genius elements to what he does that you want to unleash, but you want to just rein in the parts that aren't useful. Like, there's times, for example, like they told us this story on my EU podcast where Grabs was telling a story about how one of the reasons he thinks Jankos is the best player in G2 is because Jankos would not only like come with all his lanes and be doing normal pathing and setting up a gank, but then he would even preemptively realize actually, fuck, Caps is just going to go in before I even get there. But it's just head off now. Now, that's a positive for Caps, for Jankos. It's a fucking negative for Caps. Like, the idea that, like, that's the point. These genius players, like, I know, like, listen, it's very tough to say because on the one hand, some of them he gets away with that look amazing, like Faker. That's why I always give the example, because Faker is so classic at going under the tower, killing you with 1 HP, coming out and going calculated and fucking styling off in the jungle, right? But the problem is, Caps does some of those where even when he's going in, it's like, this was never going to work even going in, mate. Like you really could add a tiny bit of discipline, even if it was like 5% of your players, and I think it would make you like a 10% better player, if you know what I mean. And if you're already as good as he is, that's the point. It would take you to the next level. You would go to the next level.
Okay, can I then propose a question?
I forgot to say the point. So the point I was going to say about Fnatic was, to me, the discipline would be something like you impose something on him, like only go in when the jungler comes, only go in when you have fake jungle pressure, whatever the rules you would put in places. At the moment, as far as I've heard from Fnatic, it was the opposite. They just said, right, we've got Caps. He's this crazy wild card in the mid who does whatever he wants. Cool. Right, jungler, follow him when he goes. Top laner, try not to like overextend except when he's pushing, and then that's fine. They did the other thing. They actually said, Caps, you have no discipline. Everyone else disciplines around you. Team plays around you, and then it works. Now, that's actually not a very good system generally. It will sound crazy to have your best player do. You normally, like, for example, the player that I think of when I think of that exact setup, by the way, is fucking Pawn when he used to play for Samsung White. Except the difference is Pawn was never the primary carry of the team. The whole point of Pawn is he can fuck around and coin flip all day long, because if he gets the win inside, you win the game 100%. And if he loses, well, it was never about Pawn anyway. Who gives a fuck? It was a distraction. Caps was the primary like focal point. So then you go into G2. I think it's even worse if you want the guy to become disciplined, because now they don't even have like an overall game plan in every match. They're doing genius shit. All of them together combat. They've made it worse, if anything. Now it's going to work. They're winning, but for an individual player, I think it will actually stop him reaching his limit. He is capped, essentially.
Okay, so one thing I want to say about Caps is I don't think he's a coin flip player where he does random stuff and it works or it doesn't. When we had him on the show and we talked to him about the mistakes, like the ones that popped into my head, I asked him, when you were playing Vladimir versus Azir, like that looked fucking dumb. Like, why'd you die there? And when you were playing Akali versus Renekton, like that looked fucking dumb. Why'd you die here? He had perfect explanations for both times. He's like, I miscalculated because I forgot when I use my E, I lose my health. So I started using my E and I would have survived the auto, but I miscalculated that I would lose HP. That's why I died without using pull. For the Akali Renekton one, I missed the CS and I didn't realize I missed the CS. So I should have hit level 2 here, but I didn't hit level 2 and I died. I'm not sure if he does random stuff or if he's not at the level where he's calculating things correctly.
Yeah. Sorry, finish. Sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off.
So I'm not sure if he's good. I think as he gets better, he might not make those mistakes because it's his failure in calculation, not him messing up the situation.
Two very quick things. One, you always do this where you make out like players are a graph and they're just going up and you can just take the graph and extend it. Like, sorry, did I miss something? Did I miss a memo where we've been told that Caps is going to get better? You know, he could actually get worse, Loco. I don't know if you've been watching TSM recently, but you can get worse in League of Legends. Same player, you can get worse. Weird. Broken Blade. Where the fuck's he at? Not so good anymore, is he? Haunter, King of TSM, welcome back. Right. And then the other fact I was going to say very, very quickly is, I know what you mean, Loco. Like, I'm sure he has an explanation for it all, but I would say this is the fundamental flaw he has. It doesn't matter if you calculated it all. Some of these players you should never attempt in the first place. Like, that's the point.
Yep, exactly.
If you go watch one of my favorite players of all time, Smeb. Does Smeb just go randomly in and go, well, if I'd hit that last thing on the Fiora Q, I would have killed it? It's like, no, he knows, like, the play in the first place didn't make sense. Never mind that I could have done it. Like, that's why it's a coin flip in this scenario, because he's willing to gamble. He's willing to gamble. I know, by the way, just so people don't know, the term coin flip has now been so stretched colloquially, it doesn't mean 50-50 anymore. It just means you took a gamble playing League of Legends. Because let's face it, no one is really calculating all this shit. Like, that's like LS's wet dream that they're all going like, I actually know from a play that he would have had 17 health left at that point in time. I did an auto, that's 25. And they're like, nobody does that. Like, it's all feel. It's all feel, guys. That doesn't exist.
It is calculation, but people do it by feel. People aren't going by numbers. They're doing it by feel.
It's just intuition. Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
Yeah,
what do you
no,
want to say out this?
Yeah, I was really laughing when Loco was describing those reasons that Caps like may or may not give, because it's probably like misquoted, and I don't want to like get lost in translation because I didn't actually hear what he said.
Loco bought it hook, line, and sinker though. He was all in. Did you see that? He was like this while Caps was saying it. Oh, really, Caps? And what next?
Like,
what did he do next?
I was sitting here like dying. I was dying as Loco's saying this because like, if in a scrim, if like one of my players like gets solo killed, right, like dies in a 1v1, and he's like, look, Carliner, like, you know, I just was 1 minion off 6, and if I had just gotten this baby raptor here at level 1 and then got my base not stopped and then X, Y, and Z happened, this would have worked. And I'm like, well, it didn't. You know, and like we can sit here and we can look at any play, and any player is good enough to watch a play and say, oh, this is what I was thinking. And if only X, Y, and Z happened, then this would have worked. And it's all about your risk tolerance and what level of risk you're willing to accept.
But it's also skill level. If your skill level is at a certain point, some things that are risky aren't that risky.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, yes. Yeah, sure. Yeah, but it's still like you have to decide as a team, you know, what your play style is and what level of risk you're willing to tolerate. And also like how many resources each individual player can demand. And I'm not saying that Caps plays like this, but if he is the kind of guy that, you know, is demanding jungle hovers when he wants to 1v1 at every window and is taking 1v1s at almost every window and is constantly looking to get 1v1 advantages through his mechanical advantages in lane, I do not see that as a reliable way to consistently win best of 5s against the best teams in the world. If your game plan is ever, I'm going to just execute mechanically better than my opposition and I'm going to get an advantage through that, most likely you should be looking for a different strategy. Like, that's my philosophy, and we can agree to disagree, but those sorts of things would not be acceptable. But I'll caveat that by saying, I think it was you, Thorin, mentioning like if you would like create rules or something for Caps to kind of like add some discipline to his play. I think things like that are really dangerous, and you have to be careful with putting too much control around a player, because Caps is a fantastic carry. He's capable of doing brilliant things, you know, at the drop of a hat. And I think the worst thing you could do to Caps would be put him in a little box and say, you can never go for solo kills unless your jungle is behind you, and things like this. If it's ever like binary and black and white, like yes or no, most likely you're doing a player a disservice. And yeah, I'll just say again, like those kinds of excuses coming from players are things that have been said since season 1 and things that will keep being said. And ultimately it's on the coaches, right, to help players adjust their internal decision-making process and get them to a point where their risk tolerance matches the rest of their teammates, where you can now start to play the game effectively as a team.
Like, by the way, I for anyone who's thinking, but Caps is so good, why are you criticizing him? I'll criticize any player on this exact metric right now. Like, for example, I'm not exaggerating. There are times you can go in their careers and Uzi sometimes plays incorrectly and plays too greedy. The Shy himself sometimes just does unnecessary things where he basically ints a game away. Like, these are the absolute best players we've ever produced. The reason why the Faker example is always used to prop him up as the best player ever is he did all this same shit, but then just made it work practically every fucking time. Like, when he would go in, he wouldn't then be later in an interview like, well, of course, what I meant to do was... No, he just fucking did it, didn't he? Like, at the end, he just goes, well, go look at the screen, bitch. You figure it out yourself. I did. See ya. Just goes. Like, he doesn't need to give his excuses, does he? Caps at the moment's doing your angle, like, but coach, if I just improve 10% skill level, we'll do that first and come back and talk to me. What I would do is I'd go for, like, listen, this is a joke. Don't take this seriously, all the idiots out there. But what I would do metaphorically is I would have like the Zen monk approach, because I don't know if you know this, Loco, but one of the very interesting things about Zen, which is like the Japanese formation of Buddhism, which, if you know Japanese culture, is a lot stricter, is as opposed to the approach in like India, where it's all about like being chilled out and like, you know, like learn from me, but you know, like the wisdom and stuff. What they do in Zen culture is, because they have that like harshness of Japanese culture, the ruthless element, is they'll do stuff like this would be the equivalent, right? When the player comes in, he goes, but if I'd have just done this and I got away with it, if I just done that, I would just stand there. I wouldn't say anything. I would just slap him in his face. And then when he goes, ow, I would listen. When he goes, ow, I would go, if you'd have just dodged that, you wouldn't have been hit. And he'd go, but I couldn't dodge it. I go, exactly, motherfucker. Now go out there and play the game. That's why I said metaphorically. Because otherwise you're all going to be like, no, would beat fucking Jensen. It's like, Caps in this case, wouldn't it? But, yeah. I would slap a Caps.
Yeah. You can continue the line of logic. Like if a player's like, if I only had, X, Y, and Z, like this play would have worked. I'm like, well, if you started the game with an Infinity Edge level 1, then, then also any play you make is going to work. And it's sort of it's a trap that they fall into where you can start justifying poor decision-making processes that are injecting unnecessary risk into a team game, right? It's not about you. Like if you are a team where you have to solo carry every game, then by all means, make the game about you, demand jungle pressure, take every 1v1 you want. But if you're a team and you play like a team and you can execute and win as a team, like that's what you need to do. And that's what all 5 players have to be on the same page.
And by the way, I'll even throw in, there's an element that I'll shade in actually that makes it not as bad that Caps sometimes does do this. To be fair, based on the things I've seen and actually how the drafts seem to go in the teams he's played, G2 and Fnatic, it doesn't actually seem like he does make all the superstar demands. So to be fair, if he's actually not demanding all the resources and then he has some, I can feel that does somewhat offset. Like it'd be very different if it was that classic double lift and it was like, give me everything. And then at the end, you want to give me all the excuses. Like, listen, mate, if I give you everything, there's no excuse at the end. Like, you have to just win the game. I'm sorry.